Do not disturb, do not lie. Hotels don't sleep, they breathe behind doors. After midnight, when the last room service tray sulks in a hallway and the elevators begin to whisper in their cables, the Mirabelle changes languages. Daytime is luggage and scripted smiles and coffee strong enough to fake the sun. Night is a seam ripper. It opens. It shows you what was stitched in a hurry and what was stitched by hand. I'm the night manager. My name is Noah. My office is a glass cube by the service corridor, a place where the monitors move in their soft aquarium light. I know the ticks and size of this building, what the piccolo in the pipes means when the 12th floor shower won't admit defeat, which housekeeping cart squeaks like a cricket in August. I keep a drawer with spare bow ties, a flashlight that's too proud of itself, and a little tin of chalk my father used on pool cues. The chalk is no use here, but I like the way it powders my fingerprints blue. My wife, Ava, my wife then, sold skylines to men who wanted their names printed in steel. She is an architect of gestures, the kind of woman who can say, "Cut that wall," without looking at a plan and be right. We met at a ribbon cutting for a hotel she'd reclaimed from a postal depot, standing under a canopy of glass that made rain look like it was taking notes. I liked her mind's velocity. She liked that I didn't flinch when her phone kept vibrating during dinner like a trapped wasp. We fit each other's urgency. We kept Wednesdays for us as if law had written it. Those Wednesdays had texture. She'd arrive at the Mirabelle staff entrance in a dark coat that never seemed to get wet. We'd slip into my office and kiss the way you drink water after a run, grateful and blind. She has a birthmark below the hinge of her jaw, a comma my mouth learned to read. I can tell you the exact click of the lock when my door is as closed as it can be without being rude. I can tell you what it is to undress a person who knows they built their armor themselves. The first odd thing was housekeeping's linen count. Room 412 had 2 bath sheets, 1 hand towel, 1 washcloth, and an extra bath sheet missing, marked used and removed by guest. The note was in Mara's hand, and she doesn't add commentary to the world unless it requires it. The minibar in 412 reported 2 splits of Risset gone, and the turn-down report had a smiley face on it that none of my team would draw on purpose. The guest was a corporate accountant whose face I recognized from check-ins. Always a duffel, never a suitcase, shoes that remember long hallways. The same night, my camera over the fitness room blurred for 18 seconds at 1:03 a.m., just long enough to be called coincidence if you wanted to. I could have left it there, but hotels are a study in repetition, and when the same oddness slides into the same corner twice, you have to decide if you feel like a manager or a man. The next week, 412 was not occupied, so 614 obliged. A scarf caught in the door closer, lipstick the color of late cherries on a water glass, 2 towels and a note about extra laundry that smelled of menthol toothpaste. The camera over the west stair blinked at 1:07 a.m. as if an eyelash had fallen. I watched the tape back twice and saw nothing but air learning to be guilty. I tried to give the story a kind ending. Ava had been consulting across town. Maybe she'd come by for coffee and left a scarf. Maybe the accountant was a man who felt seen in our rooms and drank what the minibar offered to be brave. Maybe ghosts like menthol. Ava brought it up before I did. Wednesdays folded laundry between us, her voice steady in a way that asked me not to interrupt. "What would you think about opening our marriage?" she asked. She said the word rules the way an architect says weight-bearing wall. She said care and honesty and us first. She didn't touch me while she said it. She stood with one foot on the rung of a chair, like a sailor adjusting to deck pitch. I wanted to be large. I wanted to be the man whose first impulse isn't to cage a thing he loves. We made rules. No one from the Mirabelle. No lies by omission. Tell before, not after. Protection and discretion and a promise that our bed remained sovereign territory. We wrote it down as if paperwork made it safe. The first night after the treaty, she kissed me like a sigh. The second, like a deadline. The third, she didn't come at all. Hotels have ways of letting you know when you're being made an extra in someone else's plot. Keycards leave crumbs. The logs told me that at 12:52, someone with access used a master on 412, then again at 12:53, then the guest's own card. I keep the masters in a locked box. Only supervisors can pull them. At 12:55, the elevator to 6 ran empty. At 12:57, the stairwell camera blinked. At 1:01, a call to the front desk asked politely for an extra toothbrush in 412. We sent it up, and it was accepted by a hand wearing a thin gold band not unlike Ava's. I didn't go knock, not yet. Intrigue is not the same as evidence, and evidence is not the same as justice. I did what the Mirabelle taught me. I set a room, and I watched who sat in it. I dusted the inside of the service corridor handle with the chalk from my father's tin and a whisper of UV powder we use for counterfeit cash. I adjusted the towel folds in 412 so the edges would record any hurry. I tightened the door closer until it resisted the impatient. Like this, never enough to be a trap, only enough to be a mirror. At 1:08, the corridor handle wore a bright print under blacklight, a small constellation where a pulse would be. At 1:12, 2 towels fell on the bathroom floor in a way that said haste, not clumsiness. At 1:15, the stair camera blinked. At 1:18, I walked into my office and found on my chair a clear silicone earbud tip like a rainfall bead, the twin to the one I would later find under 412's bed skirt. And then, because hotels love theater, the fire panel beeped a false alarm, pulled in 4B by someone's forearm leaning where it shouldn't. I cleared the alarm, my heartbeat doing a small percussion in my throat. When I looked up, Ava was in my doorway, hair pinned in a way only fast hands do, her mouth softened by the kind of laughing that doesn't need a joke. She looked at my hands first, the chalk on my fingers, the blacklight wand. Her eyes dropped to her wrist because a wrist knows when it's being watched. Under the blacklight, the invisible powder glowed like a secret that didn't know how to be subtle. "Don't," she said, not loud, not ashamed, just tired like the night had asked too many questions in a row. "Did you tell me before?" I asked. "Yes," she said, and that was the worst part. She believed it. In her mind, a text sent at 11:14, late-night debrief with a client, counted as telling. In mine, it did not. We found in that small, bright room the exact width of our rule book. His name was Theo, which felt like a story punishing me for thinking names ever protected anyone. He was the accountant with the duffel and the careful shoes, and he looked at me the way men look at a bouncer. As a test, as a mirror, as a stranger you're grateful not to know. We did not perform. I did not drag them into the lobby for a speech. I let them leave by different doors because dignity is a coin you should spend on yourself first. Ava and I went home, and we spoke in the kind of sentences that bruise less in the morning. We separated with a competence that made the lawyers fond of us. She took the linen she preferred, and the white lamp I always found too cold. I kept the chipped mug we fought over every Sunday morning like amateurs. We wrote each other a list of small instructions about plants and bills and the number of the locksmith. Then we stopped writing lists. You should know this before you decide what kind of man I am. I did not vow revenge. The Mirabelle is my sanctuary, and I refused to turn it into a courtroom. Instead, I did my rounds. I learned which night shift houseman whistles and which quiet security guard reads love poems on his break because English is stubborn in his mouth and sonnets help. I reset the door closer on 412 so it would forgive inattention. The hotel exhaled. And Myra, there is always a Myra, but she is not anyone you think. She is our overnight pastry chef, which is another way of saying priest. She comes in at 11 with her hair knotted high and her sleeves already flowered, and she makes the dawn worth arriving for. The first night back after Ava moved out, Myra knocked on my glass cube with a knuckle dusted in sugar. "You look like a person who forgot to eat," she said. "I resemble that remark," I said, and she placed a plate of something golden in front of me. It was a tart no bigger than my palm, not sweet so much as patient. She watched me bite it like she was listening for an answer. "How does it end?" she asked, as if we'd been mid-conversation. "With clean rooms and all belts returned to their proper loops," I said. Then I added, because the tart had softened my throat, "with nobody filming anything." She smiled, a slow rightness. "Good. You can come watch the ovens when your monitors start telling lies." That became our ritual. I'd take a lap of the hotel and then wander back to the kitchen, where heat lived like a gentle animal. Myra taught me to read caramel by smell. The exact instant sugar forgives you for doubting. She'd rest her palm on my ribs when she passed behind me in the narrow aisle, a professional touch that forgot to be only professional. I learned her weather, the furrow above her eyebrow that meant she'd rather lift the tray herself, the way she braced one knee against the steel table when rolling laminated dough, the stray flower print that liked to settle on her throat just above her collarbone like a dare. The first time we kissed, it was on the loading dock at 3 a.m., where the night exhales and the city doesn't yet know what it wants. She stood with her back to the cool metal of the door, and I stepped into her space with the respect of a man who understands how small a wrong move can feel. Her hand slid into my hair not to hold me but to orient me, and her mouth tasted like lemon zest and something darker, vanilla honoring its debts. When she inhaled, I felt it through her palms and I thought, this is a language I am fluent in. We kept the Mirabelle sacred. We learned the corners without cameras not to use them. We used my office only for its intended purpose, ordering fruit, writing schedules once, when she couldn't sleep and I couldn't pretend, sitting in the quiet while she nested her hand in mine palm up, like a spoon. We found a room of our own far from the hotel, a place with crooked floorboards and a window that turned whoever stood in it into art. Ava and I signed our divorce papers in a hallway that smelled of printer toner. She said, "You look well." I said, "You look like winning," and meant it because spite is an expensive addiction. I saw Thea once in a lobby months later, and we nodded like men passing on a narrow mountain path, each relieved the other didn't step sideways. One night, the Mirabelle hosted a gala for a foundation that buys beds for women who had spent too long on floors. The ballroom looked like a decision, all gold and soft light. Ava came as a donor with a new man whose hair did that thing nothing but youth can do. I saw them on the balcony and felt the kind of old ache that doesn't ask for morphine. Myra slipped her hand into mine under the bar, her thumb finding that tendon on my wrist that switches off alarms. "Do you need to go?" She whispered, lips near my ear, breath warm enough to mean several things. "I need to stay," I said. The band tuned. The first course went out. From somewhere upstairs, a pipe rapped twice, an old habit, a ghost reminding us it exists. I looked up at the chandelier where light pretended to be weightless and thought about how rooms teach you what you worship by what they keep. Around 2, after the last donor had inspected their own generosity and gone home, after the dishwashers had returned the kitchen to something like polite, I made my last round. 412 slept innocent. 614, too. In the service corridor, the handle wore no galaxies. The chalk in my pocket dusted my fingers blue for no reason except to make me laugh. The elevators purred. In my glass cube, the monitors shone a little tired, like eyes that had watched a child run around a tree and finally sit. Myra was in the pastry kitchen, forearms dusted, hair falling now that she would allow it. She leaned against the steel table and crooked one finger. I went because that is the whole point of being asked by someone who means it. We did not hurry. We leaned. We laughed into each other's mouths when I bumped a sheet pan with my hip and it sang. She braced her hands on my shoulders as if I were a counter and she'd been looking for a place to rest. When I pressed my lips to the hollow at her throat where flour liked to land, she made a sound small enough to keep, and I put it in the same pocket as the chalk, to take out later and remind myself what good luck tastes like. The sign on the door to the corridor reads, "Do not disturb," which is either a prayer or a dare. I've learned it can be both. I locked up the kitchen, reset the alarm, took one more lap of the lobby because the building sleeps better if I tuck it in. On my desk, under the UV wand I no longer needed, lay two silicone earbud tips, side by side like quotation marks. I had put them there on purpose earlier, a private punctuation to a chapter I had finally closed. I tapped them with a fingertip the way you tap a glass to call a room to attention, then turned out the light. Hotels breathe. Behind doors, people write their little operas with towels and glasses and mercy. I am not judge and I am not audience, I am steward. In the hallway, the carpet gave under my shoes, a hush meant for secrets it could afford to keep. I adjusted my tie, ridiculous at 3 in the morning and exactly right. On my way past 412, I flattened a towel's edge because neatness is an oath. In the loading dock, I found the city waiting like a lover who believes in second chances. Myra came up beside me, wiped her palms on my lapel in a move that should have been a scold and was an invitation. 10 minutes, she said, smiling at the old joke people in love tell time with. Let's use 9, I said, and tucked the last one away. Not because I was afraid of running out, but because it is a kind of reverence to leave the night a tip.